Welcome to the Michigan Outdoors Report podcast, your weekly escape into the world of hunting, fishing, and everything wild in between. Whether you're deep in the woods, out on the water, or planning your next adventure, you're in the right place. So let's gear up and get out there.
Good evening, everybody. Welcome to Michigan Outdoors Report. I am joined by co-hosts Tim and Bill, who you all know. But tonight we have a special guest. We have none other than Mr. Triston Cole from the Northern Lower Peninsula. Triston is not only a veteran outdoorsman and very passionate and devout about our hunting, fishing, outdoor heritage, but Triston is also a former legislator. So tonight, we're going to go no holds barred into a discussion about hunter engagement. What does that mean? What shape does that take? What does that look like? How does the Michigan hunter engage in the process of policy? How do they engage with legislators, commissioners, DNR officials, etc.? How do all these puzzle pieces fit together and make the sausage? So Triston, good to have you with us. Thank you so much for joining us.
Well, thank you, Jordan, and nice chatting in the pre-show, Tim and Bill. This is going to be really exciting, and I'm excited to be on with you guys to share about how sportsmen and women can be more effective in the policy arena and what it takes to do that.
So Triston, before we get too depthy, why don't you take a couple of minutes and just give us a little background for those that may not know you. Who is Triston Cole? What makes you tick?
I'm just a regular working guy that loves to hunt and fish, and I'm thinking about my food plots right now, praying for rain. I overseeded with some fertilizer last night and put some turnips out because I wanted a little larger turnip in my couple of plots come October. But I usually fail at this. And then earlier today, I checked my crawfish trap so I could put some crawfish to feed my bass in my ponds. I do outdoors everything, any chance I get. I've been blessed my entire life. I was homeschooled. I was able to hunt and fish nearly every day growing up after doing schoolwork. I don't come from a wealthy family, but we hunted and fished mostly on public land in Antrim County. And so I'm a huge public land advocate and how important it is to have those public lands available and the quality of the resource on those public lands. I got a wild idea when I was, 15 years old that I wanted to be a guide. And I took a friend of a friend turkey hunting. And lo and behold, he was actually somebody and wrote a letter to, I guess I was 14. He wrote a letter to an international birding publication. And I started getting calls from people all over the country that I was a guide and I would take them hunting. I'm 15 years old. I failed my first couple of calls, but then I got wise. And one of my first clients, he was from Ohio. He came up and I remember two-tracking in his Mercedes and going to a high point so he could make a couple business calls with his bag phone. And he paid me to do this. It was unbelievable. And so we did this. I had clients from Oregon and Ohio and all over the place that they would drive me around and we'd flush grouse and woodcock with their dogs, and I got paid to do it. And then I had the opportunity to become a guide at Sanctuary Ranch. And that was transformational because it introduced me to actual management, talking to biologists, looking at age, looking at health, looking at nutrition, and what that can do for the white-tailed deer. I'd only shot, 6-pointers, 4-pointers, spikes. I'm not sure I'd even shot an 8-pointer at that point in time. And it transformed my life. And in the meantime, I got interested in politics and had developed a relationship with my rep and my senator when I was, 14, 15 years old. And I got this wild hair to run for office, which I did in 2010. And I was the first loser in the 2010 election. I came in second place in the primary, did not give up. In fact, I ramped up involvement. I was on a first name basis with my representative. It was Greg McMaster. Called him constantly, text constantly, was working with the senator. And lo and behold, I got an opportunity to run again with an open seat in 2014. I won that election and ended up serving in the state house from 2015 through 2020, which was the term limits at the time. That was 6 years, 3 2-year terms. So I'm rambling. I don't mean to monopolize time, but it kind of gives you a little snapshot into my incredibly blessed life.
Well, thank you for bringing us up to speed a little bit there, Triston. And I guess we'll just get right off on the issue at hand. You know, I can almost hear the collective gasp from Michigan sportsmen every September when they go to the sporting goods store, they go to Myers or Jay's or whatever it might be, and they buy their hunting license and they open that digest and they go, what did they do? How did this happen? And they're angry, and there's spirited debate around the sporting goods store. Everybody's got to kick in their 2 cents. Nobody's happy. And then everybody walks out the door, and as quickly as tempers flared, everyone has forgotten. Yep. What do we do about that?
Well, so, and again, I just want to talk about successes that anybody can do. So if you remember a number of years ago that Native youth could hunt with a firearm on public land, CFR land, and state land, and private land under the age of 14. However, my daughters could not. Okay, so they were bear hunting, and we had to make sure that the bear was treed on CFR land or private land, or they could not use a firearm. I changed that law. Just by being involved in listening to sportsmen, it is now allowable for youth under the age of 14 to hunt on state land and CFR land with a rifle. The other piece of involvement that I did that really it changed all of your lives and everyone listening's lives is I forced the DNR to inventory state roads and trails, forest roads and trails, and opened up thousands of miles of 2-tracks to ATVs for the use of by sportsmen. For example, if you open up that digest, it says a lot of these roads are closed. However, they are open. These closed areas are open for the recovery of big game, meaning deer, bear, and elk, except the Pigeon River State Forest, which is under a unique director's order. Okay, so where you can walk in on state land, you can't ride your four-wheeler to your deer blind. If you shoot a deer, you can ride your four-wheeler off of the trail to go and collect that deer. I put that in the Big Game Digest because I heard from hunters that we're getting older. It's harder for me. I don't hunt as deep in the woods as I used to because I don't know how I would get a deer out if I shot one.
So obviously for you, I mean, as a legislator, you kind of had some switches and dials that you had access to that maybe the rank and file Michigan hunter doesn't. So how does the guy in the sporting goods store who simply opens up the digest and goes, oh, this is terrible, how did this happen? How does he positively take that discontent, that energy that he's feeling in that moment? What can he do? How can he engage in that policy discussion? What are his avenues? It's
really easy. It's really, really easy. And I told Tim and Bill in the pre-show that I was going to challenge them, and they probably opened up Google and solved this problem, or hopefully they did, or they can do it right now. But I asked them who their state representative and their state senator was, and if they had that person's or persons' cell phone numbers. And Jordan, I know when you and I first started talking and going back and forth, I don't believe you did. No. And you completely changed that. The number one thing that any sportsman can do, sportsman or woman, or youth for that matter, is tell your story. It's as simple as that. And you have avenues to do that because nearly every single state representative and state senator across the state does what we call coffee hours, regularly scheduled all over the district, times from morning, afternoon, evening, where they will basically be in a public place and anyone can come and meet and talk with them. All the sportsman has to do, all an individual has to do with any issue whatsoever is show up and tell their story. Ask the questions and say, look, Mr. Representative or Madam Representative or Madam Senator, I'm concerned about this. Here's my background. Here's my cell phone number. I'd love to be a resource for you. I'd love to set up a time to meet in person. I'll take you and show you these places, or I'll drive to Lansing, or we'll do a phone call or a Zoom. But the key takeaway here is tell your story.
Yeah, I'd say that's solid advice. And, to put a caveat on that, all of these names and email addresses and office phone numbers at minimum, if not cell phone numbers, which are in some cases also available, all of these things are readily available to the hunting public through a simple Google search, whether it's a senator, whether it's a representative, whether it's our fisheries chief, law enforcement chief, the deputy director, you name it. All of this information, NRC commissioners, it is publicly available. It's not
100%.
classified. It's not hidden. It's there for whoever takes the time to look for it.
Look, Jordan, I have the same cell phone number right now that I published in the newspaper in 2010 when I was running for office. It's the exact same number. It's available on my business website. It's available on my Facebook site. It's just available because it's not a secret. And when I first won my primary, I was campaigning with Lieutenant Governor Brian Calley at the time. And he made a comment that he had the same cell phone number that he had when he was county commissioner. And I thought, well, if the lieutenant governor can keep the same number, a lowly rep like me could certainly do that. And it's not uncommon. Most of these people just have one cell phone number, and it's not really a secret number. And what I've found by giving that number out, when people know they can communicate with you and contact you anytime, they rarely do. It's the people that hide their numbers and are inaccessible that really irritate people to no end, because they feel they can't get a hold of them.
Yeah, and that's a fair point too. I say that everybody's accessible. I'd say most are accessible. I think that we can all agree there are a few individuals within these various entities that are less accessible than others by their own design. But for the most part, it's an open door.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, for example,
puzzled me is the fact that this information is out there, and Michigan hunters, love them or hate them, they're some of the most passionate people and most dyed in the wool when it comes to their beliefs and the way that they were raised, their dear dogma, if you will. But they're so reluctant to actually engage. What do you think the disconnect is there, Triston? Because there's no question they had the passion. So what stops them?
Well, one, they've put people in elected office on pedestals that are undeserved. And I put my pants on just like everybody else. I'm just a regular working guy that's worked really hard, had some goals, and I've been blessed to achieve those goals. And I'm still working on a lot of goals. But it was just telling my story, being available, putting in the extra legwork because I wanted to make a difference. I wanted to make a change. I wanted to be a positive influence on the outdoors and natural resources in our state for my kids. And I just wanted better hunting and fishing. And I just saw a disconnect. When I first got involved, it was Kevin Elsenheimer, and he didn't hunt and fish, so he didn't know anything about what I cared about. And I saw that from early on. So I wanted to share what I was passionate about. The legislature is truly a real cross-section of the citizens of Michigan. We're a purple state. We're not a red state. We're not a blue state. We are kind of red in the north and blue in the south, but not all the time. But as far as the actual participation by elected officials in consumptive outdoor sports like hunting and angling, you got to remember, we're 6% of the population. So we've got 110 reps. We've got 38 state senators. I'm telling you, I don't think there's a half a dozen reps that actually hunt. Some of them will buy a hunting license, but they don't really hunt. It's just a license that they purchase. And so us as sportsmen are outnumbered by people in the legislature and the public in general. However, 80% of the legislature supports hunting, 80% of the population supports hunting. And that's why it's so important that while we're telling our story, that we are well versed in current laws and regulation and the North American model for wildlife management.
And I just want to piggyback on that point. One of the things that I have heard time and time again from Michigan sportsmen when I challenge them and I say, why don't you speak up? Why don't you show up? Well, you have all these great things to say to me in private at the family diner or whatever it is, but where are you? And the response to me is, they're not going to listen to me anyway. They don't care what I think, corrupt government, this, that, and the other thing, which is a terrible excuse. And I'm not going to say that at times dealing with the bureaucracy of natural resources isn't discouraging, because it sure the heck is. I've been there. You've been there.
Oh yeah.
But what's at stake is so much more valuable than a little personal frustration and a little personal time. And, it's entirely possible to effect change. Conversely, you lose 100% of the battles you never engage in.
That's exactly right. So I want to. I
don't have leverage with the legislators, right? So I like to point this out. Hunting and fishing brings $86 billion a year into the state of Michigan. There's an old saying, money talks and BS walks. $86 billion a year talks.
So for example, Tim, you live up, north of Gaylord, Wolverine, in that vicinity. Your representative is Parker Fairbairn. And the neighboring rep, which is just over the highway from you, is Cam Cavett. Both of those guys, Parker is actually a hunter and an angler. And what is your favorite thing to do, as far as hunting or fishing? What's the number one thing you find yourself doing?
Oh, deer hunting for sure.
Okay.
Obsessed.
Do you have access to an agricultural producer, someone that has some extra tags, where you're going to go and be able to harvest some deer?
No.
Oh, you got to work on that, because you need somebody like that where you can go shoot deer. But what I would challenge you to do is attend one of Parker's coffee hours. He just did a whole bunch of them on the islands up in the, he's going to be on Beaver Island pretty soon, but he did Drummond, he did Sugar Island, he did a bunch of the islands. He's got Mackinac Island. He's got a lot of islands in his district. So he's island hopping. And I challenge you to go to one of his coffee hours and engage him and either join him fishing or duck hunting. He likes to smallmouth bass fish up near the Sioux. Or invite him to go to, say, the Black River or one of the rivers to tag sturgeon and do something together. Just you guys doing, maybe you go and you go to the Sturgeon River. I don't know, pick something out and the two of you go do something and get to know each other.
I think that's a great point, Triston. And one of the disconnects I think happens between the Michigan hunter, fisherman, sportsman, outdoorsman, and I'll just use the term government entities or personnel, is that we tend to dehumanize them. We just think of them as government. They're still people. And you can have conversations with people. You can have debate with people. And we need that discourse. I mean, the civil debate and disagreement is the bedrock of liberty.
Well, here's the thing about hunting and fishing. It's not a partisan activity. And I've invited staunch Democrats. In fact, I've got one, he's hooked on hunting and fishing, or mostly hunting right now. And you can look him up on social media, but Harvey Santana, I introduced him to the whole world of sportsmen, of everything that we do in the outdoors. And he comes from inner city Detroit. He negotiated gang violence. He was willing to work with Republicans across the aisle in my first term. And on a wild hare, I invited him to go run bear dogs with some friends of mine. We didn't even see a bear when Harvey came up north. It was screaming hot and dry. He ended up carrying out on his shoulders a heat-stroked hound, but he was hooked. It bit him like nothing else. It's like Lyme's disease from a deer tick. It got inside of him and wouldn't leave. And now he went down, and after I called a turkey in for him. He killed a turkey. He shot a doe in one of my spots. And then he went and killed a buffalo up in the UP. And then he went and killed a great big bear. He doesn't know how lucky he was. He killed a great big bear up in the UP. Then he got this wild hare and went to Florida and killed a monster freaking 10-foot alligator. And I think he's going to Texas to hunt hogs here real soon. I don't know. The guy's just going all over the place doing this stuff. And he's a Democrat and I'm a Republican and we're not supposed to get along. Well, we blew that out of the water. Former NRC Commissioner Leslie Love, we've served at the same time frame together. And again, I liked her. She had a really good attitude, was a super awesome person. Did we agree on policy? Nope. We didn't agree on anything to speak of. But you know what? I invited her out to run bear dogs and she had a heck of a good time. And So much so she went through hunter safety. She's been to Africa on a safari now, and she served on the NRC because she was interested in this kind of thing. And you know what her biggest fear was when I introduced her to the outdoors to come up and run bear dogs and tree a bear? Her biggest fear, and it's kind of funny, we laugh about it to this day, was how to pee in the woods. That was her fear. And I said, Leslie, you know what? I'm married. I've been married a long time, and my wife's going to have to show you how to deal with that. I'm not doing it.
You know, you talked about the apolitical nature that natural resources issues should take on.
Yeah.
However, unfortunately, the day and age in which we live, sometimes these things do get politicized.
They do.
And I guess that kind of brings us up to some current events here. You know, we did a show previously and we kind of gave our outtakes, if you will, on the multi-subcommittee hearing with Mr. Nugent. Mm-hmm. And, you know, I was kind of hoping that within a couple weeks, all of that would just kind of quiet down and subside. And it is what it is. It's Uncle Ted doing Uncle Ted things. But
he's the Motor City madman. He's out there wild and crazy, and he talks really fast, and he's really sharp, and he says all these things. And you know what? He's 100% exactly like that in real life. The passion's there with every fiber of his being. Everything that he does, he lives at 100%. And you know what? I've had some one-on-one time with Ted, and it's pretty cool. And he said, you know what? It wasn't even sport when he was young and first entering the rock and roll scene. He said everybody was drunk or high, and I wanted to remember everything I did, and he never touched any of that stuff. And he said it was unbelievable. And we were talking again in the pre-show. I don't want this energy that's flame throwing, bomb dropping that Ted Nugent does as a sportsman to go to waste. I want people like you and me, people that are listening to this show, to tell their story to their representatives, to their senators, so that they can be encouraged to find the exact language in the Hunting Digest and then propose language in the form of legislation to fix some of the shortcomings and some of the things that we find that are maybe a little bit wrong in the hunting guide. Instead of just shouting from the rooftops, let's turn this energy into action. And that comes from each and every one of us communicating. So, Bill, I want to challenge you to invite your rep and your senator, or there's several in that general area. I want you to invite them. Do you walleye fish? Do you have a walleye boat or a friend that's got a walleye boat?
I've got friends with walleye boats.
I want you to invite them out to go catch walleyes on the bay over there. Or I want you to find a farmer over there that's got a problem with deer, because you're heavily populated in that area, where they've got extra tags that they're filling right now. And I want you to invite those guys to come out, and I want you to find somebody that's got a suppressed rifle setup or thermal imagery and the permits that they can shoot after dark. And I want you to invite your rep and senator, or several reps and senators, out to experience that. Because I'll tell you what, you'll build a lifelong friendship and be able to text anytime you've got a thought or idea with that rep and senator, or with multiple reps and senators, and you will affect change.
Absolutely.
So, present day, there's beef about pork.
Yeah, I was involved with that too, with Senator McBroom. This has been cooking for a long time. This has been on the smoker for a long time, and it should be really tender by now and super flavorful, and where you grab a bourbon and you enjoy this stuff. This goes way back to the early days of some high fence ranches. It's expensive to operate these things. These ranches would bring in some pigs. They were cheap to hunt. Everybody loved to shoot a hog because they're good to eat. They'd shoot them for $500 a piece. The ranch would make enough money to pay the feed bill for the deer, the elk, or whatever else they had on the ranch. And then through a series of events, it came crashing down, much like Ted actually outlined, all about the idea and the look of a pig, not actually based on science. Then there was the fear that we were going to have feral swine all over Michigan. It's all over the rule book. You can shoot them on a fishing license. I've never seen one in the woods. Do they exist? Probably. Do we want them loose in feral Michigan? Absolutely not. It would be incredibly destructive and horrible. But we walk a fine line here between private property rights and the ability for what would be in the agricultural sector, and then protecting our natural resources, and it was handled all wrong. This could have been solved by sitting down and working through the differences, working through the regulations, and it wasn't. The DNR came in with a heavy hand, because at the bottom of it all, the DNR hates high fences. They hate them in every way, shape, or form, and they saw this as a pathway to put them out of business, because they could cut this cash flow out from under them, and it was going to put people out of business. And it did, some of them. The other ones, they just got better at what they did and make more money than ever right now. And we've got listeners out there that are going to be saying, high fence ranches, that's not really hunting. Well, okay, fine. If you don't like it, don't do it. But you know what? We need every single hunter that there is, because we're in a minority and we lose on every single battle. If you don't like doing it, don't do it. If you like doing it, do it. That's perfectly fine. Doesn't matter to me, not one bit. But I will tell you, with the CWD issue that's out there, high fence ranches are going to solve that problem, because the government solves nothing, absolutely nothing. And the private sector always comes up with a solution and a pathway to solve a problem. And so we should be celebrating our high fence ranches, and because they're going to solve this problem of disease for us.
Yeah, it's hard to argue against the point that, these private institutions whose livelihood depends on finding a solution are not going to be the most motivated guys in the room to provide the solution.
They're going to do it.
But hand in glove with that, with the whole pig thing, one of the things that strikes me lately is there's a lot of political hay being made on commercial hunting and fishing operations, which there's less than 10 of them in the whole state. Meanwhile, we've got more than 2 million hunters of various disciplines, anglers, millions upon millions of state park users, and the associated onslaught of tourism dollars that result from some of these things, and out-of-state license fees. All of that, and the many issues that we have that we could be tackling, that we could be addressing, and we're focused on pigs.
I know.
Help me rationalize that.
It's because it was mishandled by the department in the beginning, and people that had the pig that ran hog hunts, it's deeply personal to them, and they won't let it go. And it's been in litigation ever since. Senator McBroom knows all about this stuff, and he could go from start to finish on the hog issue. It's really a non-issue at this point. And there should be just heavy regulations on how you would do this, and just let it go. There's simply, we're looking for a solution to a problem that doesn't exist right now, and we're wasting precious time and resources doing it. And this hog thing is just ridiculous. And frankly, it kind of needs to go away.
Well, it's kind of interesting, the vernacular that you used. I guess I would couch it right now that I'm seeing a solution in search of a problem.
That is absolutely 100%. We've got I think we might have 2 facilities in Michigan that might still have some hogs on them. I mean, it's irrelevant at this point. And there's no way that a high fence operator wants a hog to get loose, because that's money that runs away. They don't want a deer or any other critter to get out that they may be raising, because that hits their bottom line directly. There's no way they want that to happen. And plus, they're stewards of the resource as well. They don't want feral hogs all over the state of Michigan, so they deal with what Texas deals with, and the southern tier of the United States deals with the ravages of a feral hog. There's no way. I mean, we've got a handful of sportsmen who say, "Yeah, I'd like them to be out there because I'd like to hunt them." Well, no, you don't want them to be out there, because you know what? Your beautiful little food plot that's a half acre wouldn't even exist if you had a couple of hogs that got into it. It would be gone overnight. And so you don't want them out there. We deal with enough other pests out there to have feral hogs on the landscape.
So some of our listeners might be sitting out there hearing this conversation, and they're looking at us with a raised eyebrow going, okay, so you guys are sitting there decrying politicization of natural resources, and then you're saying hunters and fishermen and outdoorsmen need to go build relationships with legislators. Yeah. Aren't we inviting politicization of natural resources?
Oh, so, when no, we're not. we're building relationships. Honestly, politics is the last thing you talk about. Remember, it goes back to what I said in the beginning. Tell your story. You need to be and create a situation, just like you're going to sit over a funnel for deer hunting, or you're going to wait for the smelt run. You've got to set the scenario. You put a food plot in a certain position so that you're next to the big hemlock or the white pine. Maybe you're baiting. I love baiting. Baited my whole life. We hunt the northern woodland nomadic whitetail. They're unpatternable in the big woods with a sparse population. You have to bait them in order to be successful on a regular basis, and at least back when I was a little kid. But set the stage to be successful. You want to set it up where you're in a position to tell your story repeatedly, and you're a friendly face. Back to these coffee hours. Don't say anything the first time you go. They're going to ask you who you are, and they're going to want to engage with you. It might just be you and the representative. I did coffee hours where nobody showed up. I sat there for an hour and played on my phone. I'd have some where, 2 people. I had some where there was 40 people that showed up because there was something they were angry about. I treated everybody the same, and I'll guarantee you right now that every representative in the state of Michigan, at least in the northern tier, and people that are doing these coffee hours will treat everybody equally and fairly, and they want to hear from you. Because it's the most powerful thing, again, is your story. Because when I was talking to a representative or a senator that didn't hunt or fish, didn't understand the passion that we have in any way, shape, or form. If I said, if this rule goes into effect, it's going to hurt people. Well, that's so impersonal. That means nothing. But if I could say, this rule and regulation is going to hurt, Bill and his family because of this, it's going to impact the way that he gets to the tree stand with his daughter that's in a wheelchair, just making up stories here. But those details, guess what? That representative or that senator is going to remember that, because we remember as people, we remember stories, we remember real things. And when the rep can come back and tell your story or summarize your story to his or her colleagues, that's real power.
Well, and I think that there is a very deep connection to the soul and the primal heritage of the hunter in the state of Michigan, because for tens of thousands of years, long before any of us was ever a thought in our dad's head, hunters sat around the campfires and they told stories. They shared experiences. And that's what we have to continue to do today in different venues, in different formats, is facilitate that campfire and share those stories.
Yeah, the campfire is now, instead of an actual flame and a burning ember, is an iPhone. You can pull up a picture. I recently was engaged in a conversation with I'm not politically correct, so you're going to have to edit some of this stuff out, most likely. But a rabid progressive that had a visceral, she told me this, because she was a sane individual other than her beliefs in a handful of things, but she was a normal person. And we're face to face, as close as I am to this screen right here. And she said, I have a visceral fear of firearms. And I'm like, whoa, how do I deal with this? And she said, why do you need them? Why do you want them? And so I had to think, here, me, a gun owner since the age of 10 years old with my Red Ryder BB gun I got from my grandpa. I had to think about, how do I explain the feeling when you get your first deer rifle? That lever action Marlin 30-30 that I got from my grandpa, because I mounted a turkey that's sitting right here on the wall, mounted it for him. He gave me a deer rifle in trade for this mount. Why does that mean so much to me? I don't have any problem talking to people, I didn't have a clear and concise answer. And so I had to think about this. How do I explain why I have an AR, why I have an SKS, why I have 6 shotguns, why I've got, 15 rifles, and what it means? Because my world is completely different than her world. And she had a niece that was killed in a college shooting. She said, I am scared of guns. And I don't understand you. And I wanted to say, well, I was brought up with firearms. It's a tool. There's something to be enjoyed, collected, and used in a responsible fashion. I don't understand you and your fear. And so this is actually an ongoing conversation that we're going to pick up and talk more about. But we as sportsmen need to be prepared to talk about what it's like to have you have my 2.5-year-old daughter standing next to me as I sit on a milk crate on the ground and I shoot a deer, and she's looking right down the arrow at the deer that's 10 yards away. I can feel her breath on my face when I shoot that deer. And then I have her own flashlight with her. She's 2.5 years old, and she's blood trailing this deer up with me, and she gets the blood streaks on her face at 2 years old. The passion, we have to be able to tell that type of story to people that come from a different upbringing, a completely different background. And when you start doing this, you can see and hear and feel the passion. And they're going to start to understand that we're truly deeply passionate about this. And we need to be open to listen and feel their passion from the opposite direction, because that's real too. Not everyone is like us and has mounts behind our, pictures here and has these deeply personal stories that mean so much to us and our families. I feel they're missing out. I'm sure you guys feel the same way. How do we convey that? And when you tell your stories, you will change hearts and minds. And when you change hearts and minds, you change politics without being political. And you can change the rule book, and you can change the outcome for the 36 deer yards, those habitat places in the Upper Peninsula. You can change the outlook of crop damage permits for farms in the Lapeer area. You can change the outlook for what sportsmen did to bring back the sturgeon, a living dinosaur that lives in the Vanderbilt area in a massive way that people don't even know about. People will then begin to break down those walls so that we can talk about what the wolf is doing in the Upper Peninsula, how it belongs on the landscape, but needs to be managed using the philosophy and the tools given to us and laid out in the North American Model for Wildlife Management, where we, through rights and the what was given to us by God in the Bible, we are to manage all the beasts of the land. It's very simple. We have an impact, therefore we have a responsibility. So sorry to ramble, but you get me all fired up on this stuff.
No, it's great. It's good. It's awesome.
Yeah.
I couldn't agree more.
No, if I could real quick, Jordan, a lot of talk here about the resources that we have with the state reps and state senators, and kind of turn it twofold. We're a resource for them to share our experience and our stories. Mm-hmm. We've talked about a lot of the do's, setting up meetings, making phone calls, going to the coffee hours. With your previous experience, and I'm sure you communicated with a lot of people where came from different backgrounds, different experiences, different passions. What are some don'ts as a sportsman when we meet with these state reps and senators?
Great.
What are some things that we don't want to do where we could turn the conversation sour or possibly, lose their interest? So what we don't do is we don't show super gory pictures of gutting a deer. We don't show some of the things that we find commonplace. You've got to be very, very careful and gentle with how you introduce and expose people that have zero connection. I mean, zero connection to the natural way of life, the normal way of life that we see it as sportsmen. So you can't show the picture of a beaver pinched in a 330 conibear. The first picture you show your state rep, unless you know that they are an outdoorsman. Parker's going to be fine. He's going to want to see all this stuff, Tim. Most of your reps and senator, if Bill, are going to be just fine with this stuff. But when I talked to Leslie Love, I didn't show her those pictures. She didn't understand any of it. I can show them to her now because she's experienced these things. She's filleted fish. She's hunted, a big game in Africa. She's now exposed and more experienced to that. So start off with something more gentle and appropriate.
you can get to some of these things. But look, remember what I said in the beginning, 80% are non-hunters. 80% of our population is non-hunters. They don't understand it. So we can't be these bullies, if you will, and come out swinging with everything we got. That's not how you affect change. You've got to meet people where they're at and let them know that you have a passion. They're going to be inquisitive, and then we're going to be able to share more about it. And then we have to, in the reverse, listen to them. You've got to understand that while we see firearms as a tool and something to be coveted and acquired and treasured, passed on through generation to generation, they see, the urban America sees guns as a weapon of war and something for violence to kill people. And so we're coming from different sides. And so if we start showing pictures of us, rattling off magazines at targets, they're going to put up walls. And they're not going to hear us. They're not going to truly begin to understand what we are all about. Yeah, we all like to go, dump a few magazines on some targets. That's a lot of fun. But that's not really who we are and what we're all about as sportsmen all of the time. And so it's in bits and pieces and very carefully over time that we do things as we build these relationships. And it is building relationships. And this is something that we never stop doing. Remember, we have term limits in Michigan for the state legislature. When I was in, we could do 3 2-year terms in the House and 2 4-year terms in the Senate. That was recently changed because people got active and they changed it. So now you can do 12 years total. House, all in the House, all in the Senate, or any combination. But I want to pivot to a couple of things, and you can edit this so that it mixes just right. But I'm not sure that people truly understand the legislative process and how an idea from you, Jordan, actually becomes a law. So let's say you have coffee hours with Carl Bonack in Marquette, and you have an idea. Carl's then going to take that idea back to Lansing, and he's going to talk to his staff. And he's going to say, staffer, I met with Jordan at coffee hours, and he had this idea. That staffer might call you for more details, but he's going to submit for draft legislation, for verbiage to be drafted. And that's going to work through the process. He's going to talk to some lobbyists. He's going to talk to some different people. He's going to talk to his colleagues. This language is going to come up. He's probably going to loop you in on it. And then once you get the language really close, you're going to get what's called a blueback. It's literally the language of the bill, white paper, with a heavy blue paper backing with lines on it where you can get co-sponsors. Okay, so it's called a blueback because there's a blue piece of paper and white paper. He's going to take that around to his friends, connections. We're going to deal with the House, in the House, and they're going to sign their name on there to co-sponsor this legislation. And then he's going to turn that in. LSB is what's called Legislative Service Bureau, does the drafting. Then he's going to turn it in, and it's going to be given a bill number, HB 4570 or whatever the number is. Now it's going to be what's called first reading. It's going to be read in on the floor of the House of Representatives, and it's going to be assigned to a committee. Okay, so now what Carl's going to do, and what you should do, Jordan, is you should probably reach out to the chair of that committee, and you're going to be working with Carl. You're going to also know who's on that committee. You're going to make communication, with them in some capacity, probably send them a letter, an email. And then Carl's going to work to get a hearing in committee for this piece of legislation. You, Jordan, are going to travel to Lansing, and you're going to testify on behalf of this, legislation. Then, usually, there's 2 committee hearings, typically. You're going to have one where everybody testifies, tells their story, and then it's going to come up again at a future date at the pleasure of the chair of that committee for a vote. Some things never come up for a vote. Lots of things never come up for a vote. But if Carl's doing a good job and the committee members are doing a good job, it pushes the chair to hold that vote. When it passes, it then goes to the whole floor of the House of Representatives. And that now it's the pleasure of the majority floor leader and the Speaker of the House if it comes up for a vote on the House floor when it comes out of committee. So now Carl Bonac is now communicating with the Speaker of the House, which hopefully he has a good relationship with, and the floor leader for when this happens. And then it comes up for a vote on the floor, and then it goes to the Senate and starts all over again. Okay? The magic, if you remember nothing about the magic of Lansing, it's called the Lansing zip code. 5620-1. And you're like, what the heck is that? You got to have a majority. If you don't have the Lansing zip code 5620-1, you got a whole lot of nothing, no matter how hard you work and no matter how passionate you are. You've got to get a majority in the House, which is 56. You got 110 reps, 56. You've got to get 20 in the Senate because there's 38 state senators. And then you've got to have the governor's signature. That's a 1. So 5620-1. If you don't get that, if you can't get that, you've got a whole lot of nothing. So that takes us to the real life right now. The increase in hunting license fees. Okay, any of the number of the baiting tag, all this other stuff that's floating around out there. Before everybody gets excited, can it get 5620-1? And most likely not, because we have divided government.
Right.
So before everybody gets excited about all this stuff, they should look realistically at it, call their representative and or their state senator and say, hey, does this have a chance? And if they say no, I mean, you probably think about it from time to time, but I certainly wouldn't want to give it legs and talk about it too much. It's not going to happen. So therefore, why are we worrying about it? We need to go to things that are going to happen or could happen and spend our energy there.
I want to backtrack just briefly to, what Tim had to say. What are the don'ts? So I've got a couple of don'ts. The first one is Michigan hunters love an echo chamber. We love to gather around the fire and give each other neck strain, preaching to the choir. We love echo chambers. But the problem with the conversations is they're very circular, right? And there's nothing wrong with bouncing ideas off each other and kicking an issue around. But unfortunately, many times when we engage in these echo chamber conversations, be that, a buddy on the fishing boat or around the sporting goods counter or whatever the case may be, a backyard barbecue, it doesn't go anywhere. It goes in the circle until it runs out of energy and it dies. That's the danger of the echo chamber. So don't bring a good idea to die in the echo chamber. Keep that conversation going. Mm-hmm. Well, how do you do that? Well, maybe you start having that conversation with people who are slightly outside of your circle. Maybe you start having that conversation with someone disagrees with you because you're interested in why they disagree. Getting out of the comfort zone, breaking the echo chamber, that's positive traction forward. So don't get sunk in the echo chamber. Number 2, subcontracting. And this is a big one. And a lot of folks that have been following me for a while know that from time to time, I will dog on the stakeholder groups a little bit. But here's why. When a member of stakeholder group ABC pays his annual dues, unfortunately, all too many times that individual hands over that money and walks away from the table without ever engaging in a meaningful way. Why? Because he paid you to do it. He subcontracted his personal responsibility as a steward of our woods and our waters, our resources in the great state of Michigan to organization leader ABC. And nor does he usually go back and do his due diligence and say, hey, John Smith, did you go to that hearing? Because I'd really like you to tell me about the hearing and what did our organization bring to the table in that hearing and how did we represent ourselves? Those conversations don't happen very often because we're subcontracting a personal responsibility. I'm not advocating against stakeholder group membership. I'm advocating against apathy. Be a member. You have
to be comfortable with being uncomfortable. Yep. And you will find that people are very open to things. So Minority Floor Leader Yusuf Rabi from the People's Republic of Ann Arbor. Okay. He's Minority Floor Leader. I'm Majority Floor Leader. And we had, and when I tell you we have nothing in common, we have nothing in common. I'm telling you zero, except we care about people and our constituents in the state of Michigan. Okay. Which is actually a big deal. When we were term limited out, both of us were term limited out, and he's like, Cole, what are you going to do when you're done? And I said, I don't know. I'm thinking about starting a nonprofit so that I can get engage more elected officials and their staff in outdoor pursuits, things that I care about that they obviously have no way of connecting with, and which I've done, and I still have. It's not real active right now, but I have that. And he said, I've never shot a gun. I'm like, you never shot a gun? You never shot a BB gun or anything? Nope, never shot a gun. I said, Yusuf, you come to my house and we'll shoot guns. And lo and behold, Yusuf, big, tall, super ultra progressive, look him up. Super ultra progressive, never shot a firearm, came to my house, and I had laid out in the backyard. I had my crossbow, I had my AR, I had a 22, I had a bunch of stuff laid out. And I took pictures of him in the euphoria of popping some caps and having the time of his life with an experience he'd never had. And he made me promise to never show those pictures in public because of the smile that was on his face when he double tapped my AR. He loved it. And he knows it. He probably wants one. But it was unbelievable. I took him down to the Jordan River. And I said, watch out for the poison ivy right here, but put your hands in the water. And Yusuf knelt down in the sand, put his hands in the crystal clear, cold, raging waters by Penny Bridge in the Jordan River Valley. And I looked at him and I said, Jordan, you own this river just as much as I do. It's equal right here. And it was unbelievable, the feeling of sharing that we had as I introduced him to a tiny little piece of my world. And then we promptly went into Bel Air and we toured Shorts Brewing and had a couple beers. And I could text Jordan, or I could text Yusuf right now and he would respond. I could tell him a story right now and he would care. Now, I did not reciprocate going to the People's Republic of Ann Arbor because Yusuf was respectful enough not to ask me to do this, to come down to Hash Bash and experience things in Ann Arbor with his people. Okay? We did not do that. But I'm trying to tell these stories to spur activity and spur thoughts with the listeners. Back to your list of don'ts. Don't show up in dirty jeans. You don't have to show up in a camouflage t-shirt. Be respectful. Be respectful of the resource. Maybe you bring an elk ivory. We got a couple elk in the background. Maybe bring an elk ivory. And you flop that out and you say, here, I want you to tell me what this is. Parker Fairbairn is going to be able to tell you what that is. But there are some reps that don't know we even have elk in Michigan. And they're not going to have the foggiest idea what that is, or that there's actually a piece of ivory in the mouth of every elk out there. They don't know, but that's a conversation starter. Okay? I kept a piece of line 5, an actual piece of the pipeline that runs out of the Straits of Mackinac on my desk at all times. A real piece of pipe that's really heavy and really thick, super sturdy, super safe. And it was a conversation starter. So I planted those seeds to do that. But again, what you don't do is you don't show up with dirty fingernails, smelling like you just gutted a deer, with your big knife on the side, open carry in a 44. Don't do that. Just don't do that. Show up, be kind, nice, and polite. Show a couple of pictures that are tasteful of your little girl, your granddaughter, or the neighbor girl, whatever it is. Holding a walleye, holding a bluegill, and tell your story.
One of the things I think that people struggle with when they start down this road of, okay, well, I hear you guys and I'm passionate and you're right. I got to get off the couch. I got to get involved. But, oh, my God, there's so much bureaucracy. Where do I start? There's the legislature. There's the commission. There's the DNR. And they get overwhelmed. Yeah. So give me a top-down, down and dirty. Start here, Triston.
Go to a coffee hour. Go to coffee hour, introduce yourself, and say, I'm passionate about hunting cottontail rabbits with a beagle. And I have a beagle. If you would ever like to go rabbit hunting, I would love to take you. And if you ever want to know more about it.
If I want to engage with a commissioner, how do I do that? Does my approach change with a commissioner? Do I have the same conversation?
Yeah. So I always engaged with the NRC commissioners when I was elected, before I was elected, and I was blessed to have a good relationship with multiple chairs of the commission, still engaged with past commissioners and current commissioners because they know I care. I'm not going to ask them for things they can't do. I'm not going to ask them for 10,000 things. I might ask them for one. I'm going to tell a story. I'm going to try to plant things with them so that it full circles around and it becomes their idea. I'm going to offer little pieces of fact and little pieces of story that fit with other people's pieces of story so that they can see the bigger picture for what it means to be a sportsman in Michigan and what we all want, need, and desire to have, this phenomenal resource. And how we, maybe how we can make it better. Now, do I overdo it sometimes? I absolutely do. I've got 6 pages of deer ideas that I have sent to multiple commissioners, and they're really not in order, and there's a lot there. And some of it is pipe dreams, some of it's not. But you know what? If I send them 6 pages of something, and I warn them, I call them and tell them, I said, I'm going to email you, and this is a big email. And I don't expect them to look at it, but they know it's there. And so I'll follow up probably on one thing. Start really small and go from there, and just know that it takes a long time. And firsthand, Jordan, how long it takes and what you have to do to make one simple change that in our minds may make the most sense in the world. It's the easiest thing to do, but nothing's easy. And be prepared to be in this for the long haul. We can never, ever stop being advocates for the natural world and what we're passionate about. And just never, ever, ever stop. And you're going to hit no, and inaction and more no's. And people aren't going to care. And they're going to drop the ball. And you're going to think, why didn't you do this? Why didn't you say that? Don't stop. Keep going. Keep telling your story. You can make a difference. You will make a difference.
So
the don't is a don't stop.
This whole thing up with a bow on top of it tonight for our viewers, for our listeners out there. The key is this: the very uncomplicated truth of what you have to do to affect positive change in the realm of natural resources in the state of Michigan is simply this: build relationships
100%.
And share your story.
100%. That is it. Back to this. My friend, I'm going to call her my friend, and we don't agree on anything. We're really, really, really opposites. We're going to continue the conversation about firearms because we're building that relationship. She said she's a vegetarian. She's not. She eats chicken and fish a couple times a week. And I asked her, I looked her in the eyeballs and I said, will you try venison? She said, I've tried venison. I didn't like it. I said, will you try venison that I cook for you? She said she would. And so I'm going to invite her and her husband. Her husband's from Haiti and has an interest in hunting. He goes to Alaska fishing. And I'm going to invite them. My wife and I will have them over for dinner, and I will cook the finest venison plate you ever saw. Pound it out, really nice backstrap. I'll probably have some $high bourbon sitting there, and we will have the glorious flavor of melt in your mouth venison. And I'm telling you, she's going to love it. And that's going to go a long ways in this relationship of introducing her to what we all are passionate about, the listeners here and the 4 of us. But this may take me a year. This may take me a lifetime. This conversation will never stop. Some of my best conversations and were with people that I disagreed with. Because it's so fun telling stories that I care about that you guys don't care about because you have your own stories just like it. But it's fun reliving the 6-point Jordan that you worked really, really hard for that's on your wall, that's your biggest trophy. Telling that story to someone that doesn't even know what a 6-point is.
Right.
And being fine-tuning and honing and reliving those moments, people see that passion. Your reps and senators will see that passion. Build the relationship where you can just drop a text to your rep, to your senator, to the NRC commissioner. And you know what? Honey works a lot better than vinegar. And in saying a simple thank you, or, hey, you did a great job at the coffee hours. Man, you really engaged with that person regarding, the boat launch in a fantastic way. Your response was great. Has nothing to do with what you care about, all right? Nothing at all. But it's positive affirmation for something that someone was really passionate about. Or I had, when I was running for office for the Senate, which I came in the second place, first loser, I was at an event with somebody, and another person came up and was so torqued at me. It was unbelievable. They're sitting there hammering, jamming their finger onto my chest, hammering me. Bam, 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 bam. You did this and you did that, which I hadn't done. And they didn't know the whole story. And I just let them do it. And because I wasn't going to change their mind, I just said, I'm sorry you feel that way. And I let them spout off. I guarantee that guy has never forgot how I did not react. Because that person was simply angry. And that's okay. I wasn't going to change their mind. Why would I even try? I just said, I'm sorry you feel that way. I'm truly sorry about that. And then we left it right at that. And so how you react to opposition and people that disagree with you is a big deal. So don't react. Don't get angry. Just pivot to a less provocative story. Pivot to mushroom hunting, pivot to polishing Petoskey stones. I don't care what you pivot to, but pivot when you feel passions going out of control over something. Pivot to something that's more neutral. And believe me, that will have a massive impact.
Well, and I think hand in glove with that, we kind of have to keep ourselves in check too. As I highlighted earlier, you won't find a Michigan angler or a Michigan hunter who's not passionate and opinionated. We're going to tell you how we feel. We're going to let you know.
Yep.
And I think sometimes we have a fault in where we are so hardwired in our own belief system that we listen to rebuttal instead of listening to learn. We all have things to learn. We can learn things from opposing points of view, from people that grew up differently than we did. Like you said, Yusuf never shot a firearm.
Nope.
But you took that time and you engaged with him. You listened to him. You listened to learn. You didn't listen to rebuttal his stance. And that's that's something that we have to get better at as a fraternity, is listening, not just talking. The most powerful tool we have at our disposal to affect change, yes, it is our own voice. But sometimes there's merit to saying nothing and simply listening.
Yeah. Just know, we are living in the greatest time for sportsmen. The deer hunting has never been better, other than some areas in the UP, Jordan, I know, but the UP is a separate state inside the state, so it's slightly different. In the Lower Peninsula, I don't believe the deer hunting has ever been better than it is now. We are complaining about the most frivolous problems right now. It's unbelievable. The fishing has never been better, outside from smelt dipping and filling the backs of trucks. But you know what? If you want to have a garbage can full of smelt, bring your friends, bring your kids, bring your mom and dad, whoever, and you can all catch, dip 2.5 gallons of smelt. So you can still get the same quantity. You just got to spread the love a little bit. But we are living in one of the greatest times. And we're less than thankful most of the time for it. And all we're seeing is the negative. By gosh, we've got a ton of positive. We've got more state land than any other state this side of the Mississippi River. The opportunities in Michigan are boundless. They're endless. They're limitless. You just have to put a little effort into it. And you know what? Our legislature is so readily available and willing to communicate with us, and they make the laws and rules. The NRC invites you, begs you to come down and testify in front of them. Do they listen? They listen. Do they always act? No, they don't. Is it frustrating? Yes, because we all have the best idea, I know. But it's consistency, it's persistency, it's never giving up and sharing your passion, telling your story, and being forgiving of other people that aren't as passionate about things. I go rambling on about political stuff because I'm super passionate about it. A lot of people probably say, oh, that's Cole. He's just on his tirade again about how to affect change. But I'm passionate about that. And I'll tell you what, you can put my cell phone number in the chat, or you can publish it on here, and I'm willing to talk to absolutely anybody that's listening to this podcast. Anybody. I will take the time to walk them through how to do this. Just like we've gone over in this, I will personally take the time. I'll spend whatever time is necessary to help you be comfortable when going to a coffee hour, helping you with discussion points. I love it that much, and I care that much about this. I'm willing to do that with anybody and everybody.
Well, Triston, we are out of time for tonight, but I can't thank you enough for taking the time out of your evening to come and spend it with us and discuss these things and lend your voice to this wonderful discussion and debate that we've had this evening. And thank you for continuing to advocate and be a voice for Michigan hunters well beyond your tenure in office.
You guys are awesome, and I really enjoy being on, and hopefully I can come back again if I didn't wear out my welcome by talking too much.
No, you're welcome anytime, Triston.
Well, thanks so much, everybody, for tuning in, and we appreciate each and every one of you who took the time to listen. And we'll be back again next week with another episode of Michigan Outdoors Report.